Hi, friends, and welcome back to Precisely Nowhere. We're recording this early because I mentioned in the last episode that in celebration of my birthday month, I'm taking August off from the pod. As promised, the content will still be flowing, and we have a guest with us today. One thing about me, if I meet someone cool in my 9 to 5 or my personal life, I'll eventually ask them to come on the pod. So here we are. I had the pleasure of working with Jayde in my 9 to 5 and got to witness her brilliance. Since then, Jayde and I have kept in touch. She's been gracious enough to meet with me, share some tips that have helped me grow as a creator. I'm super excited to have her join us today so that she can share her knowledge with y'all and we can all get to know her a bit more. Jayde is a social media strategist and creatorpreneur from Atlanta, Georgia, with over 13 years of experience in the marketing and advertising industry. Jayde has established herself as a well-respected creative, writer, and speaker. I've seen you speak in so many different panels. I always love the nuggets of inspo and knowledge. She is the founder and head creative of M-Co, a multidisciplinary social-first creative agency, and also the host of Creator Tea Talk, a community and brand focused on fostering transparent conversations between creators and creator economy professionals. In her free time, she travels frequently between her home in Atlanta and Brooklyn, New York. So she is also a fellow New Yorker, which I love. I'm going to pass it off to Jayde now to say hello to everyone. Tell us a little bit about what she's been up to lately.
Hello. Thank you so much for having me and thank you for the warm intro. What have I been up to lately? I feel like I've been up to a lot. Travel, I just got back from Cannes and I also just kicked off my first ever virtual social media summit, which is something that I came up with a whim at 3 in the morning and it went really well. So I'm very happy with that. But I'm excited. I feel like now I'm in like my rest era after a busy like Q2. I'm just like, all right, time to power down just a little bit and then I'll get right back to work. But I'm feeling good.
I love those in the middle of the night ideas that you then run with because sometimes those are the best ideas.
Agreed. I feel like they always happen to me. It's like I'll be in the middle of sleeping and then I'll like wake up. It's almost like that feeling when you have to wake up to go pee. Instead, for me, it's like I have an idea and I have to like put it down in my notes app on my phone.
Good for you. Because I feel like sometimes when you have those ideas and you don't write them down, you forget them. And then you're like noodling, what was that idea?
Exactly. Literally that. That's why, although I feel like you're not supposed to, I do sleep next to my phone, but it's literally not to scroll. It's literally just in case I have a thought.
I love it. And love that you are in a rest mode as well. We talk a lot about that on the pod, how to keep up the stamina of like staying creative and just like keeping our best selves, we need time for rest. And sometimes that can get lost in today's day and age because there's that pressure to like always be doing something.
Yeah, absolutely. Always. The cycle of capitalism keeps us productive.
Oh, it sure does. Oh, well, speaking of capitalism, you know, like life, identity, you've turned LinkedIn into a space where personality actually exists. I feel like the status quo used to be just, your work persona, you update it with where you're working. What part of you were you not willing to leave behind to just fit that platform?
Yeah, I think it was really my personality, to be honest. I feel like when I started creating, I got my start on Twitter, which a lot of people don't know. And I always say RIP to Twitter because I really miss what it used to be. But I think a big part of my presence on Twitter that I had at the time was really just me having these kind of like off the cuff thoughts that would come into my head and then I would just go tweet it really quickly. And I do think that was always like a good part of like my creative process as a writer. But I just think the ability to articulate your thoughts in like a funny kind of quippy way was something that was one of the ways in which I wanted to like express myself and express those like more humorous parts of my personality. I just think it's ironic because I don't think when people meet me in person necessarily, and especially when I was younger, like when I was a little bit more in my shell, I don't think people would think of me as like a funny person. But I would say I'm actually really hilarious. You just don't know. Like in a written form because that's just like where I feel most comfortable. So when I started posting on LinkedIn, I think I was like, I'm not gonna just like stop being that like humorous part of myself all just because I'm like on LinkedIn all of a sudden. Like I am a professional, but I still show up in workspaces in the way that like I feel is very authentic to who I am. So that's the thing I just like didn't want to leave when I started posting on LinkedIn.
I love that. And I think that there's this pressure sometimes for people to conform to what the platform might be or how you see people using it. So it's empowering to hear your
Yeah,
perspective.
it's been like a an interesting thing to kind of see the response to it as well because I constantly get messages and like comments and DMs from people that are like, I just love the way you show up on LinkedIn. And I get what they mean, but it's also funny to me because I'm like, I'm literally just being myself. It's just I'm just being me. And that's it. But I
I
guess it's
love it.
more simple in practice.
Yeah, there's this pressure of, sometimes that's what stops people from even posting. I know I've been there in different points of life where I'm like, what am I going to say? And we have this huge personality outside of social platforms, and sometimes it's hard to bring that to the platform.
Absolutely.
What do you think scares people more? Posting something cringe or posting something honest?
That's a great question. I think honestly, posting something cringe. There is something about being perceived as cringe that really holds people back. I'm realizing, especially as like a creator, I noticed that so many people who I know that like want to be creators, they're so afraid of like being perceived as like weird or lame or not cool. And I just think that's so funny because I'm like, I actually think it's like I wouldn't even say it's weird because I understand it's like a very human experience, but I think it's uncool to not feel cool about who you are. Makes sense. So I'm like, if there was any place to just be in the way that you are and how you show up in your everyday life, I feel like social media is that place because like I feel like you'll find, you know, the people on the internet who like really get you, just in the same way that we would in real life. It's like in the real world outside of social media, you gravitate and people gravitate towards you based on like who you are and how you present yourself. And that means you're not going to be for everyone, but like we don't need to be for everyone. There's like way too many people on this planet. We can't be one. So I feel like there's a lot of concern about like being perceived as cringe, but I honestly feel like once you kind of throw that out the window, you are able to kind of create in your own power and just be. And I feel like that's actually quite freeing.
Yeah, it sounds freeing
It
for
is.
sure.
I mean,
I'm
but I,
like,
mhm, go
no,
ahead.
yeah, I feel like we have to remember we're not everyone's cup of tea, and that's okay.
Yeah. And I will say I think that's something to be very transparent that has come with like life experience and just also therapy. Like I think a lot of the work that I've done in therapy is just to make sure I actually like myself. And I always tell people that in order to be a content creator, you do have to like yourself. Like you can't just be on the internet being like self-deprecating and, you know, showing up in a way that doesn't like feel very natural to who you are in the relationship that you have with yourself. And I felt that way about entrepreneurship too. I feel like entrepreneurship is a reflection of how you see your own life and your own vision for your world. And you are the architect of that vision. So if it's like you're investing your time and energy to build something that makes you really happy, you're going to do that because you actually like yourself. So it honestly is just like a mirror that you're holding up to yourself.
Wow, that's such a simple idea when you think about it, but also profound because I feel like a lot of people don't think about that. We hear a lot about people showing, you need to show up in your authentic self, but no one really talks about the fact that liking yourself is so important.
It is, yeah. I mean, it's like why I think that's like kind of the foundation of just being a creative who actually like acts on their creativity, because I think all of us are creatives as humans. Like that's just in us as people. We ideate, we think about how to improve things or how we can make things better or more interesting. But I think the people that act on it are people who are willing to get past the fear of being perceived and just say like, hey, I'm doing this thing because I want to and because it is what makes me feel good as a person. Like everything that I do is because I'm like these like ideas that I activate on. And yes, it's like all oriented around like my business and this brand that I built. But I even look at my job holistically as like I created this job for myself because I wanted to make myself happier because I'm in a relationship with myself because I like myself. If that makes sense.
Oh, it 100% makes sense. I feel like a big reason why I keep the pot up is because it's something that has helped me grow and that I genuinely love doing. And even when I have cringe moments of like, I'm talking about this or sharing this, it's just at the end of the day, me staying true to myself. And I feel like a better person and more whole doing that.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's the rewarding thing. It's like you feel better when you pour into yourself creatively. And just like, you feel better when you eat food or you feel better when you go work out. Like all of these are things, muscles that need to be exercised. And creativity is one of those things that can be quite fueling.
Yes, period on that.
Yeah.
Do you think creators of color are navigating a pressure to be palatable online in order to stay visible?
Yeah, 100%. I think there is always going to be this element of code switching that creatives, especially BIPOC creatives and queer creatives, have to do in certain spaces. Well, I wouldn't even say they have to do it, but they just feel the pressure to do. And I think that's largely just because of capitalism, which I feel is a product of white supremacy and also sexism and all the other isms. It's just like, as long as there is like some type of structure or system that is designed to oppress people, we're always going to be operating in a place of survival. And a part of that survival is figuring out how to navigate those systems so that you can live a better quality of life. And I think about, my experiences in corporate America, for example. I was often the only Black woman on my team or the only person of color in my team. And this was probably like 6 to 7 years of me being in corporate before I became an entrepreneur. Um, and granted, I think, people weren't necessarily like going out of their way to harm me. But I do think there's something to be said about like being the only Black woman in a certain environment and you having to abide by these like unspoken rules that don't necessarily feel natural to you, but you have to abide by them to play the game or to be able to progress in the way that you want to. And I think that's eventually why I left. I was just like, it's actually not really worth it for me to be here trying to code switch or trying to maneuver in a way that they've told me I've had to in order to get where I want to go. And that's not to say that people cannot find success in corporate environments or any environments where they are the other or probably not most visible. I just think I decided to take a different route because it wasn't going to work for me long term.
Yeah, no, I feel you. I feel like I have to turn down my spicy Latina every day when I sign online.
Yeah. Yeah. Because it,
And it's exhausting sometimes because there's a way that you naturally want like act, but then there's, this, yeah, like code switching and fitting into what's acceptable in corporate America. And
yeah.
sometimes that's not natural to, how we were raised culturally and what feels authentic to us.
Yeah. And I think that goes across the board. Like you have people who are neurodivergent who don't necessarily think or do work in the same way that the standard person does. Like they may not find success in those environments or people with disabilities. It really just depends on the person. But I even remember like one time in one of my former jobs, I had this moment where I was in a conference room talking to one of our executives and I was just presenting a plan for our social media presence. And the whole time I'm thinking, I'm just like, yep, I got you. Here's the plan. And I guess because I wasn't doing it with enough enthusiasm, I got pulled into a meeting with my manager and he was like, are you okay? And I was like, yeah. And he was like, well, you just like weren't smiling and you just seemed like you didn't really care. And I was like, if I didn't care, I wouldn't have been in the meeting.
Yes.
Let's start there. You know what I mean? Because
Yeah.
almost like if I'm, not running around having this like bubbly personality and high energy at all times, all of a sudden I don't care about my job, despite the fact that I've been doing work here for, months, showing that I care. So
Yeah.
it's like, people are always going to have perceptions of you based on like their own experiences and how they feel. They should be showing up because oftentimes a lot of it is projection, right? But I will say for like people of color, I think whether you choose to stay in those environments or not, the best thing you can do for yourself is just like one, do the things that bring you joy. And then two, just use those environments for like the purpose of literally like providing you other fulfillment in life. So let's say hypothetically, I stayed in corporate America. Maybe I would have been okay with that if that meant like, well, at least it's fueling my pockets. you know,
Yes,
it needs to have some type of purpose that will bring you some type of enjoyment in your life.
for sure. And there's a lot of ways that we can create that. It's
Yeah,
good to remember that.
for sure.
You are amazing, and you've built a space that doesn't center just you, but also uplifts other Black creators. When did your work start to feel bigger than just your own career?
Yeah, I think honestly, immediately after leaving corporate America, I was like, ain't no way. I'm the only one that's like experiencing these things. And I think in finding like community, especially in the social media profession, which I so appreciated of like having at the time, and still have, I think when I would speak to other social media professionals, other people of color, other women, other queers in the space, it was always like, we have a lot of similarities in our experiences. Like, I wish I could look back at corporate America and say, like, oh, I had a wonderful time. And I know so many people that have, but I just didn't. And I think there was a need for me to find community in that. And in those spaces, I was able to hear these stories from other creatives I knew. So I knew there was like an appetite to learn how to like navigate, I guess, like these environments, no matter what the environment was. And upon just kind of like getting into my content creation journey, it was also the questions I was being asked by like younger creators too. A lot of them were like, how do I do this? And what does it take to do this? And I was just like, okay, there's clearly a need there. And I think like with many people who are starting like a business or a community or a brand, it starts with a need. And I think that's what I saw, this desire of people in my spaces to kind of like commune over being a social media professional, being a career creative, being a content creator. And I think my focus on like BIPOC and queer communities was really important to me because that's who I'm surrounded by the most.
I love it. Do you ever feel a tension between building something for yourself versus feeling responsible to the community that supported you?
Mm. It's interesting because I feel like everything that I create for myself is usually in service of my community, to be honest. Like it feels me because like I look at myself as a member of my community, if that makes sense.
Yeah,
But it also, I feel like it serves both purposes. But at the same time, I think when I am building things, a lot of what I'm building, like I said before, is like this is actually going to bring me like enjoyment and joy. Money, of course, because I do like money. Let's make that very clear. I love money. But also like enjoyment. And I find that I'm most like creatively fueled or I feel really excited about the things that I'm building when I can use them to pour into my other community. So let's say hypothetically, like I launch a new brand tomorrow. It could be fully in service of like me and what I'm building for myself. But ultimately, when I get those dollars from building that brand, I'm going to pour it right back into my community because that's like I'm very community oriented. And I think how can I support people in the process of me like earning my wins and everything that I'm learning? Because I just feel like otherwise, why are we doing it? You know?
100%. And I love that that's something that you're focused on and it shows in the types of content that you create and the initiatives that you like bring forward, like Creator Tea Talk. I think it's really awesome that you give back to the community because we need that. We need people like building our communities and empowering each other.
Yeah. But I will say, because I know like we talk about now, especially community very often. And I think one of the things I'm learning is building community requires a lot of sacrifice. But I think that's the price you pay to have like a loving community. You know what I mean? You have
Yeah.
to be willing to sacrifice your time and your energy and sometimes your resources to get that support. And I'm okay with that. I think, you know, going back to the capitalism of it all, because of capitalism, we live in a very individualistic society. And I don't think that's normal per se. Like, granted, the United States specifically has been like this for years, but I say this as a child of immigrants, and most people from other countries know this. Like, most of our cultures are very collectivist oriented. So I
Yeah.
feel like for me, even operating inside capitalism, I'm like, it just doesn't feel very natural to me to be hoarding my resources. You know what I mean? It just doesn't
Oh,
feel
I know. I know what you
right.
mean. Yeah, as also a child of immigrants, I'm like, and a first gen, Latina, I'm like, yeah, what all I know is generations before me giving back
Yeah,
and paving the way for the next generation. And that's how we've gotten here. So it's like, we have to, for me, it's like more natural to do my part and give those things away for free sometimes, even if it's not ideal in a capitalist society,
yeah.
because we want to make the world a better place than where we found it.
Yeah, literally. And I don't think anyone is like a terrible person if they don't feel that way. I think that's just like, a difference of opinion.
Yeah.
But I also think like most people I know are on their way to the hypothetical top, want to see people up there with them. you know,
Yes,
which is what it is.
for sure. What's something you've actively protected from becoming content, even if it would perform well? I know there's that balance of you share your life,
Mhm.
but there's that fine line of what you want to keep to yourself.
Yeah, I definitely don't share most aspects of my personal life. And I think that's something that has been really interesting about my content. And also, just I think a reflection of like, you can do this work without people being all in your business because a lot of people are like, I feel like I know you. And I'm like, yeah, that's intentional. It's like, you feel that way, but you don't really. And a big part of that is because I have a lot of boundaries around like what I am willing to not share online. No one knows about my dating life. I could be married for all y'all know, and y'all would never know. I could have like 6 kids. Y'all would never know. But I just don't really, I choose not to talk about those aspects of my life because I also feel that like the internet can be really dangerous if you're not protective. And I just don't feel like anyone needs to have that much access to me, especially because I'm such a private person. And to be honest, I'm also an introvert, despite the fact that I am online. And I get a lot of energy from solitude and being in my own space and my own kind of like private little corner. And having people have so much access to me is like the opposite of that. So I would say that it's funny because I think I was talking to a friend about this. I think, that's definitely the space that I'm in now where I choose to be more private. But that's not to say that like further down the line, a lot of those things could change. I think it will fully be dependent on where I am in life. But so far and up until now, I like keeping a very quiet, private, personal life.
Okay, that was going to be my next question. I was like, will we ever know Jade's relationship status?
I mean, maybe one day I'll pop out and be like, surprise, I have a husband or a wife. Who knows? One of my favorite like pieces of content that I've seen is from Issa Rae when she got married and like no one even knew she was dating, and then all of a sudden she was like in her wedding pictures and she's like, "This is this man. I brought a dress." Just thought it was so funny.
She is very private. I do love that about her.
But yeah.
Oh, that is hilarious. Yeah, I guess we'll see.
Mhm.
Well, that's fair. You got to keep your boundaries and whatever you need to, stay happy. And
Yeah, absolutely.
what's something people confuse for community that actually isn't?
Ooh, I love that question. Events. So this is like very niche, but again, I'm also a marketer. So it's been interesting to see the industry kind of evolve over time. Like obviously events have always been a thing, but creator-led events are becoming more popular. And I say this as one who hosts many events too. I don't think that just because you gather people in a space, that means that you have community. That just means you have an event with attendees. You know what I mean? The community part, I believe, is like what's happening post event or even before the event. It's the offline and online conversations that are happening, like in the DMs, in the group chats, in the text message, in the Slack groups, or even just like how you show up for one another. One thing I so appreciate is that in my community that I've built, we actually show up for each other. So we are constantly like referring opportunities to each other. We go to each other's events. We'll highlight each other's events. It's like a reciprocal relationship rather than just being like, hey, come to this mixer that I'm hosting. And I do think that's a part of it, but I think it's like everything that happens beyond that. It's like literally a relationship. I think if the relationship part doesn't exist, it's not really a community.
That is an interesting take and very honest. And I think it's something that we should really think about because, yeah, I think community is this buzzword right now. And we are all throwing it around like we all have this community, but you're right. To have this community, we need relationships to foster that.
And to my point earlier, there it also requires like I think that's like the product of relationships. It requires sacrifice. Like if you're not actually sacrificing anything to hold your community, it's not really a community.
I love it. Those hot takes. Bring it.
Yeah.
Was there a moment you realized being transparent about money, boundaries, and burnout wasn't risky? It was powerful. I know you talk a lot about that. We've been talking about capitalism.
Yeah, I think not necessarily the boundaries and burnout part, but I definitely think I had some hesitation in the beginning about talking about pay transparency. And the hesitation honestly was very short-lived because I think I had to like refocus on like what my purpose is as a creator. But I think it's again, especially coming from like an immigrant family, like there was always this kind of fear around like letting people know how much money you have. And I still operate with like caution. Because again, I just don't think everyone needs to be all up in my business, but I'll share like things about like how much I'm making and how much I earned on an opportunity to like people who subscribe to my newsletter or follow me on social media. And I think that's important again because I think it creates a more equitable industry, or especially a creator economy. Because the thing about it is, like, you literally won't know how much you could be charging for something until you ask somebody else. And I'm
Yeah.
very grateful that when I was coming up, especially as a creator, that I had other creators who were guiding me on how much I could charge for certain things. I literally did not know. It's like there's no standard. There's so many reports on like how much creators are making, but like no one really knows. And I always say this is like the answer that people don't like to hear. It's like how much to charge for a piece of content is how much you're willing to ask for. So that means it's going
Hmm.
to change from creative to creative, from brand to brand, from person to person. So with that said, I think a big part of my approach in being transparent about my rates and just like how I'm making my money and how I go about getting it is making sure that other creatives who want to be in the same field of work are doing so equitably, especially because women were likely to ask for less, at least by 50% of what a man would ask for, which is insane.
Yeah.
So I'm like, there is no way that I can have my sisters out here not asking for what they deserve. And a lot of times it just purely comes out of not knowing. So I'm like, the least I can do is be like transparent about what I'm doing so that other creatives can get the opportunities as well and get paid.
I Yeah, and I think that's so important. And I love that you're giving back to your creator friends and people that you don't even know because you're right. How do you know? Like, I have no idea. And you can Google things, but it's always helpful to hear from like a source and someone who's actually living it.
Exactly. Agree.
Well, we're talking about transparency, equitability. What's something about access that you see more clearly now that you didn't earlier in your career? Like access to opportunities or rooms that you've been in?
It's interesting. I think when I first started in my career, it's like hypothetically, I understood that like networking was important, but I don't think I realized like how important it was until I started aggressively networking. Like nothing lights a fire under your ass like being an entrepreneur when you actually have to go make your own money.
Yeah.
I think very quickly, once I started like getting into these rooms that I've been in, I was like, oh, this is like literally where the money is made. Like to me, I always thought it was like, oh, all I need is to be like really creative and like really good at my job and like that will be enough. No, that is not it. Actually, I would even say that like matters like only half the time, to be very honest. Like you could be quite mediocre at the actual skill, but if you have the relationship, you're still likely going to get the opportunity. And I think I learned that rather quickly. It's something I wish I knew when I was coming up in corporate America, because I probably would have had a better time in corporate America, but things happen the way they're supposed to. But once I got into my entrepreneurship journey and was like kind of like what I like to call shaking hands and kissing babies, going through these like different rooms and networking and really having conversations with a lot of the decision makers, those are the things that really got me the opportunities I desired. So I honestly say that probably at least 50% of my job as a creatorpreneur is networking, because that's how I get a lot of my deals made.
I can see that. Yeah, sometimes in the industry, it's who you know.
Yep. I would say always who you know. To
Yeah.
be honest, 99% of the time, it's always who you know.
Okay, you heard it here, folks. So keep that in mind. Network, don't be afraid to shoot your shot.
Yeah. What and I will always give this example too, as someone who is like a creator in like the B2B kind of business space, which isn't as popular as like more lifestyle creators who are like on Instagram and TikTok and they post about their lives, right? I think the way it always shocks those types of creators when one, I'm in the same rooms as them, or two, when they find out I'm making more money than them. And it's because I'm like, yeah, not to say that your content isn't great, but it's like you're stopping at creating content, which is like probably going to get you in the room, but what's going to get me the deal post being in the room is me shaking those hands and kissing those babies. So it really does make the difference.
Yeah, going the extra mile.
Mm-hmm.
All of the wisdom. How do you decide what's worth your energy now, not just financially, but emotionally?
Oh, yeah, that's a great question. And I think it's something that I'm still learning. It's like almost kind of like mood dependent, to be very honest. I think my team especially has done a really great job of holding me accountable to make sure I'm not saying yes to everything. But I think even going into this year, like I'm a strategist, so I think I got really methodical. I was like, okay, these are my goals for the year. This is how I'm going to go about doing them. What I did was had a baseline for last year. So I looked at every engagement that I did last year, speaking engagements, brand partnerships, podcasts, literally everything that required me to do labor. And I think the total came out to like 128 engagements over the year.
Wow.
So insane. I was like, girl, who do you think you are, Oprah? Well, Oprah's probably doing like double that. But and then I was like, okay, going into this year, I want to reach this revenue goal, but I also want to scale back. So how do I do that? And we've been very intentional about what I say yes to and what I don't. Obviously, prioritizing paid opportunities, because a lot of work I did last year was like free for like the groundwork of it all. But now I don't really need to do as many free things because I've been able to scale faster. So I'm scaling back. And then also, I am thinking about like what my months are going to look like at least like a month to 2 months in advance. So, for example, if I know now that in July I'm going to be taking 2 weeks off, I'm probably not going to say yes to a bunch of projects in July. You know what I mean? So it's kind of
Yeah.
just that like foresight to be like, based on what I know about my calendar, roughly around this time, I know I'm going to be focused on this or this, so that therefore I may not be able to say yes to this or this. But to that point, I think a lot of the work I was doing last year, while it was fun and amazing and I loved it, I was also like, okay, I did the thing and now it's time for me to like be a lot more selective. And I think there's going to be seasons for that. I think there's going to be times where you go super hard and just go, 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 say yes to everything. And I also think there's seasons for like rest and kind of just like getting yourself back into a place where you can be like, okay, scale sustainably. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that intentionality too with kind of how you want to see your life and really thinking about that is helpful because sometimes that gets lost in the doing.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's why I love that you said that because I think it's why it's super helpful to actually write down your goals. It's so funny because like my therapist would say this to me. She'd be like, did you write down your goals? I'm like, no. But for some reason for business, I'll always do it. But for life in general, I think if you're like writing down your goals, it helps them become a lot more actionable. So you can like really make a plan for like what steps you're going to take.
For sure. I love the nuggets of your therapist because on the pod, I'm plugging what my therapist is telling me. And they are sometimes the person that holds me accountable to myself because they're like, you are so involved and you like to do too much sometimes.
Literally, I always say that my therapist is a part of my team. Like, truly.
I mean, it's true because they do help keep your mental health.
Yeah, 100%.
Well, at this point in your life, what actually makes you feel safe?
Hmm. Honestly, I would say being in the comfort of my home. I love my home so much. I bought my home in 2019, and I think because a lot of my work requires me to be away, it is like the thing that feels like a constant and just place of peace for me. And it's so funny because I think very similar to like romantic relationships. I feel like my house, I'm like, sometimes I'm in my house and I'm like, oh, I cannot stand it here. And I have to go. And I'm like, I want to renovate my entire house. And I hate the tile in like my bathroom floor. And then like when I leave and I'm like, oh, I miss my house. So it's like, I've realized that like my home really is my safe space. And even though I may have like frustrations with it sometimes, it's still going to be the place that has like allowed me to grow safely and comfortably in the person that I am. And I so appreciate it for that. And I think the dynamic that I have now, which is really great, is that I go back and forth between Atlanta and Brooklyn. And I'm also grateful because Brooklyn is like a second home for me. And while I don't live here, it has become a place for me that I would say like this balance where I have Atlanta to be this like place of peace and quiet, and like Brooklyn this place that like motivates me and keeps me like wanting more and reaching for the stars. Like having both is like really helpful for me to feel like a whole person. And it's so crazy because it's like how can your life be so oriented around like places? But
Yeah.
that's literally how it feels. It's like my yin and yang, and I feel like very complete and whole with both of them. Brooklyn and Atlanta give me like everything I need to just be as a creative and like as a person. Um, and I'm happy that I have like a place to call home in like both places. It's wonderful.
I love that. And I think it's something for us to all keep in mind, like finding that those safe spaces that help us feel whole and in all different aspects.
Yeah.
Oh, I love this. Well, we're talking about safe spaces and, making decisions, going after your dreams. Have you ever made a decision that looked like a step back to other people, but it felt like a step forward to you?
Yeah. I would honestly say becoming an entrepreneur. Like that was actually not the thing. I wouldn't say it's not what I thought I would be doing. I just didn't think it would happen so fast. I think I knew from an early age that I wanted to be an entrepreneur, but honestly, when I would visualize it when I was younger, I was like, oh, it's going to happen when I'm like in my 40s and 50s. Like, I literally in my mind was like, I'm going to go through corporate America after college, become an executive of someone else's company, and then I will leave to do entrepreneurship. And I think, when I was in my corporate career, especially when I got my job at Delta, I was on the social media team there. And I think everyone was like, oh man, Jay pulled Delta, like she's going to be there forever. And when it was like 11 months in, I was like, I got to go. And everyone was like, girl, what? And because of those like doubts and fears and concerns, I was like, okay, maybe I'm not ready for entrepreneurship. I went and got another job after Delta. And I was like, okay, maybe this will be like the last job. Like this is me after like quitting like 4 or 5 jobs. And I was like, maybe this will be the last one. And then again, 6 months in, I got that itch and I was like, yeah, I don't know if I can do this. So I remember I quit that job and I was just like, all right, Jayde, it's either you do the entrepreneurship thing now, even though it's not what you expected now, or you try to force another full-time job. And then I just was like, I'm just going to do entrepreneurship and call it a day.
Good for you.
Yeah. I mean, it was kind of scary, but I also think there was kind of this like, audacity that I had, but it was like fear driving me, but fear in a different way. It was fear. I was afraid that if I like stayed in corporate America, I would be absolutely miserable. So I was like, that fear is much more scarier to me than like trying entrepreneurship. And then, 5 years in, I'm still pretty happy.
Yeah, I feel like you're thriving. So you made the right choice. And sometimes it doesn't look right for other people, but you have to stay true to yourself because you're the only one doing it.
Agreed. It definitely does not need to make sense to anyone but you, for sure.
We're talking about this internal compass. What does it feel like in your body when something is aligned versus when you're forcing it?
Yeah, I
Do
love
you
that.
know?
Yes, I think when I'm forcing something, it definitely feels like anxiety and agitation. It's always so funny. I talk to my team about this, about how, and again, I think this is also a product of the patriarchy and capitalism. When we talk about business, everyone's always like, it's not personal. It's not personal, which is such a lie because everything about business is personal. Like it's literally built on relationships. Everything is personal. And I can't think of a line of work where the business isn't personal, even if you're just talking to computers all day. That's still a bit of a relationship. I think for me, I can tell whether the opportunity is wearing on me when I'm just not feeling enthusiastic or excited about it, or I feel like annoyance and agitation, or when I feel the anxiety. And the unfortunate thing about me is when I feel anxious, I can feel it. It's like all in my stomach. It like makes me breathe faster. So I think those kind of physical signs from my body, I can definitely tell. And then when I have an opportunity that like I'm feeling excited about or just like know that it's going to benefit me, I get the butterflies. It's like,
Oh,
it's very, the way I could describe it is almost like sparkly,
I love it.
like the sparkle emoji. Yeah.
Lots of sparkle emojis here for it. And I think it's good for us to all know what those triggers are internally because sometimes I feel like if we're not in tune with ourselves,
Mhm.
we can be doing things that are actually not benefiting us.
Yeah. And one thing I'll say too, this is also where I do rely on my team as well, which is really nice to have. So you can have like a bit of a gut check. Cause I remember there was this project that I was working on for a brand partner. And I'm not going to lie, they were driving me insane. And I was just like, I don't want to do this anymore. Let's cut the contract. I was like, get me out of this. They were like, Jayde. I'm like such a creative. I love the business aspects of it too, but I'm like, let me just focus on the output. And I just felt like they were making the process more complicated than it needed to be. But that's where I really appreciated my team because they just stepped in. They said, we'll handle the comms here. You don't actually need to talk to them.
Love that.
And then in the end, I was so happy with the project.
That's super helpful.
Yeah, sometimes it just requires like, additional support.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Very honest. When was the last time you surprised yourself?
Hmm. To be honest, I think I am constantly surprising myself. I feel like everything that I do, this sounds so like fickle and silly. It's not to say that I'm not being strategic about my business, because I do think a lot of the choices I make are very strategic, but I also think a lot of what I'm doing, I'm just kind of operating on vibes. Like I have these like ideas literally, and I'm just like, let's try it and see if it works. And I think the more I do that, I'm always like, wow. I was telling a friend about this. Like sometimes I have these moments in my, I guess, my journey in being an entrepreneur where it's almost like I cut to the camera and I'm like, did I just do that? And I'm like, not me being like a boss. Like, that's so funny because it just seems so. I'm watching someone on TV being a boss. It's me, but it's like I'm having an outer body experience. And I'll talk to my clients sometimes and I'm like, wow, not me making sense. Or I'm talking to my team and I'm like, wow, that was actually really smart, Jade.
I love these outer body experiences.
I feel like I'm like in an episode of The Office where I just have to like cut to the camera really quickly and have like break the fourth wall. But that's literally how it feels. Yes, like I'm a businesswoman. I'm very serious about my business, and every choice I make is very strategic. But I also think what most entrepreneurs will tell you, which is the truth about entrepreneurship, no one really knows what they're doing. We're just doing stuff and then like hoping it works. But I do think what that has done for me, it has allowed me to become more confident in my decision making, which I so appreciate.
That is sound advice and very honest. So thank you.
Of course.
We are getting to hot takes, which I'm so excited to get your hot takes on because I know you will bring it and have no fear in answering questions. If this past year of your life was honest, not aesthetic, not curated, what would you call it?
I'm just like thinking about like what has this past year of my life been? I would say it's been sacrifices and operating on vibes. And I think that speaks to a couple of things that I've been feeling. I think operating on vibes can mean a lot of things. Like, I think what it really comes down to is just kind of a lot of the decision making that I've been having to do. I think this is probably the most adult I've ever felt because of just all the decision making. Like, there's so many decisions, and it comes with, being a business owner. I think being a single woman, I think being, a homeowner, someone that takes care of herself. I'm constantly like, wow, here's another decision I have to make because I'm trying to optimize my life, in a way that's sustainable, but also sacrifices because I think in the process of me becoming what I would even just say is less of a people pleaser and more selfish, which I think my selfishness is a good thing for me because it's really just getting myself to a base point of where I'm not people pleasing like I used to. I think the sacrifices have been really just like relationships, and that includes family relationships, friendships, and business relationships as well. But I think ultimately a lot of those choices that I've had to make have shown me that like it's better for me in the end.
Yeah, very honest. And I think it takes a lot of sacrifice to do what you do and to do it at the level that you're doing it. And sometimes it's good for us to be reminded of that because we have to be ready to make those sacrifices for our growth.
Yeah, absolutely.
What are you currently unlearning that you didn't even realize was shaping how you move?
Ooh. To be honest, I think it was the people pleasing. I don't even think my brain processed the fact that I was a people pleaser until I started processing some relationship dynamics that I was experiencing in therapy. And I was like, oh, shit, well, that makes so much sense. And I think in that process, and thank God for my therapist, I think I've learned areas where I need to improve in that way. So that's what I've been very steadfast on. I think, going into the new year, a lot of people are like, I'm in my yoga era. And I'm like, I'm in my non people pleasing era. Like, that's what I'm focused on. And so far, so good. I think I've been doing a really great job of taming that side of me. I think I still have a lot of room for improvement, but I think my ability to say, like, you know what? No, and I don't know you an explanation has been incredible for me. So yes, that part.
Isn't it so empowering? I have been unlearning that as well. I think culturally, I was like, yeah, you say yes, even if it's a last minute invite and it's
Exactly.
really inconvenient for you. And therapy has helped me with that as well. Like, you don't need to give this over explained reason
Correct.
because you just don't need to.
And honestly, it allows me to, I feel, empower other people too. Cause I think especially with women, like I see it with like friends and other creatives I know. They're like, I'm so sorry I didn't respond to your text message. I'm like, girl, respond when you want to. Like, you do not owe me an explanation for why you didn't respond within 24 hours. Like, it's gonna be okay, I promise.
Some of those are my closest friendships that I know she'll respond to me in 3 weeks and there's no love lost.
Yeah, and you find that people will adapt if they really care about you. And I think that's like the beautiful thing that comes out of it. Like, people will accept you for who you are.
For sure.
Yeah.
What's something you want more Black creators or just creators in general to move differently about?
Mm. I would say, okay, two things. One, be a little bit more strategic and professional in your approach. I think, especially as someone who is a business creator, and not to say that this is everyone's vision, but if creating is something that you want to do long term and you want to make into a business, you need to start acting like a business owner. You can't just be like operating on creative and vibes and think that's enough. Get some systems, some structure, and some strategy. Oh, a 3S. I love that for me. I just made that up. I love that.
I love it too. You can coin it here.
Love that. Let me write that down. And then also always prioritize your mental health. I think in the process of you kind of going towards more and being about your bag, you can also do that in a sustainable way. Another S. And I think that makes the journey more fulfilling, in my opinion.
Okay, love the wisdom. Finish this line. Lately, I've been realizing.
Hmm. Lately, I've been realizing that I can do anything that I want.
Yes, queen.
And I love that for me.
I love this for you too. And I love that you just leveled it up to 1,000. I'm like, okay, we need all of this energy. Just take some energy from Jayde. Well, we are all about gratitude. What I've been learning in therapy is that a lot of us practice gratitude when we are in this like moment of something's gone wrong in our lives and we need to like, okay, think of something to be grateful for. But if we actually make it a practice more in our day to day, it'll be more second nature in our brain and help us, I think, live a more like fulfilled life. I also took this from Oprah because she's had gratitude journals since she was a little girl,
Yes. Shout out to Mama O.
right?
Yeah.
So, what's something that you're grateful for?
I am grateful for God's continued blessings. I'm also grateful for my team and their continued support. And I'm grateful for younger me for continuing to dream. Truly.
Oh, I love that.
Little, little me.
Shout out to little Jayde. What's something you're still learning or navigating and giving yourself grace around?
To be honest, I think it's the well-being. I think my mental health is something that I've been prioritized, and now I'm trying to like transfer that energy over to my physical health. And I'm going to be very honest, I'm the worst at taking care of myself, but I also think I'm trying to remind myself that like it's okay for me to like not be in the shape that I was when I was in my early 20s because I'm in my early 30s now and I'm just living a very different life, and give myself grace for that and like see how I can just, not necessarily try to get back to who that younger version of myself was is, but like just implement some of those kind of like activities and changes in this stage of my life. But I also think it's going to be a journey, so I'm trying not to put too much pressure on myself.
I think that's great. And if I can give any unsolicited advice, I'd say get a walking pad
Yeah.
and walk while you watch TV. That's how I started it. I just started walking little by little. And now it's become more second nature that I'm not like, oh my God, I have to walk.
Yeah, I love that. No, that's actually very helpful. And it's funny because you're like the third person that's told me that. And I'm like convinced now I need to get a walking pad. So I will be. Stay tuned. Drop the link.
Walking does wonders. I'll send you this Insta that I follow. It's our daily walk. And she posts things from all different people from around the world from their daily walks and
Wow.
also facts about like the power of walking.
Oh,
Well,
I
I
love.
never realized it.
Yeah, please send. I love that.
I will DM it to you and I'll put it in the episode description.
Yay.
As we're wrapping up, I want you to tell listeners where can they find you? Feel free
Yeah.
to plug any social website, all the above.
Yes. So unfortunately for me, because I built a brand, everything is consistent. So it's Jayde Powell across all channels. That's Jade with a Y. And you can find me on Instagram, LinkedIn, Threads, or TikTok, and then as well as my website. Oh, and I forgot the most important one, LinkedIn, and then as well as my website, jadipowell.com.
Amazing. We will drop those links in the episode description so you can easily follow Jayde. Her content will lift your day. It always does for mine and give you some laughs as well.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for joining us. I was super excited about today, and I'm like, I know Jay's a hot commodity, so her saying yes to coming on the pod and sharing her wisdom with everyone here at Precisely Nowhere, we are forever grateful.
Thank you for having me. It was truly a pleasure. And I'm so glad we got to yap. Always love our conversation. So truly thank you for having me.
Same. I feel like I'm gonna go into the rest of my week and day like on this high now and just trying to soak in all of your wisdom.
I'm so glad. I love to hear it.
Music done by Marco. You can find him at midnight, MIDNITE _mind 80 on Instagram.